If, if you're in now, you've probably heard something that's gone on First Jack Dorsey's site, and I think it's still native to Jack Dorsey's site, but now it's beyond that. And I'll explain what happened from my perspective, and uh, where whereas I understand it, the minders of this want to go. Okay, and basically, it's pretty much like this. This was out of the blue for me, but first of all, happy Juneteenth in that context, and I received a call that there's a group of African American investors that have already reached out to the National Football League with the intent of bringing NFL football to Oakland, and they received the response. So the fact that they received the response in and of itself is indicative of the fact that the group isn't full of fly-by-nighters. They have asked that I discuss this and that I be involved as a consultant in full disclosure, as I put in the text. So everything that I talk with you about will be from these perspectives. First of all, this is all brand new to me, A. Second, I've done a lot of the preliminary work with respect to what stadium financing would look like that holds a private financing face as opposed to a public one. Third, I'm mindful of the fact that this comes in the middle of a pandemic. Fourth, I'm also mindful of the fact that it comes in the middle of a situation where a number of organizations, civic organizations, are running gigantic deficits and they're growing. So all of this happens in that context. However, there are a lot of good things that can come of this because also of those situations. And there are a number of opportunities to change certain development laws, specifically industrial development bond financing, that I think that we can take advantage of. And in fact, I know we can take advantage of given the climate. So let's start with, the basics. Why? Well, the why is quite obvious. There's a void in Oakland for professional sports, and the void is there for a number of reasons that have been hashed over many times. Many times. I don't know that we need to rehash them. And I think, in fact, doing so would be completely illogical, save for the question of what did we do before that we shouldn't have done or should not do this time? Or, on the other hand, what did we do before that maybe we should do again because it had a chance? There's that too. So I also want to be mindful of the fact this happens at the tail end of Juneteenth, and definitely the most important Juneteenth ever in our history. So what are we talking about? Right now, we're talking about an idea that the NFL is quite apparently interested in because of the people who are involved. Okay, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a concept that was laid out to me that basically, looks like or goes like this, if you will. 4 primary objectives. 4, not 8. 4. All right. 1, becoming the first African American majority share NFL team ownership group in history. 2, developing a new NFL football stadium and entertainment hospitality complex near and around the current Coliseum site to spearhead implementation of the Coliseum specific plan. 3, assembling a conglomerate of Black entertainers, athletes, and entrepreneurs who, by pooling their resources together and utilizing the tools of collective wealth and economic development, will demonstrate the benefits and value of African American economic unity and partnership. 4, much needed jobs, job training, economic development, and education services used to benefit the most underserved communities in Oakland, especially the communities directly adjacent to and surrounding the Coliseum, Oakland Coliseum complex. And that last part is vitally important given where we are, in that this is a pandemic. Okay. So, and show Richard Hike says, very interesting. How likely do you think the NFL will go for this? Well, that's a good question, Richard, who's also a vlogger. I think I actually sent you a link, by the way, if you wanted to join. But check your email. But to answer your question, this is proposals, unlike what you're going to hear in the media, are not one and dones if the NFL has responded back that they're reviewing it. It's an iterative process. And it starts with the people that are involved, who they know. It starts with the proposal itself. It starts with whether the proposal itself meets the realities of the time. That's the biggest concern of all, obviously. Okay. And it starts with having a scenario plan that involves an acknowledgement of the stakeholders and a need to talk with them. For example, this can't be done, obviously, without the Oakland Athletics. Because if we're talking about the Coliseum and the Coliseum area specific plan, then, and the Oakland A's have been negotiating for control of that site, anything done there has to be done in some kind of partnership with the Oakland Athletics. How that partnership will look, I don't know. And the reason why I say that is because, look, let's take Major League Baseball for a second, all right? According to the commissioner of Major League Baseball, they've suffered a 70% reduction in revenue over the record $10.7 billion that was taken in 2019. So that brings them down to roughly $3.2 billion. So you divide that times the 30 organizations that are involved, and then you consider the 26-team roster. Remember, the roster was increased this year, right? And so you're looking at, to basically save you the math trouble, okay, roughly their ability to pay each player less than the just north of $4 million that the average Major League Baseball salary is. And that's not including the administrative costs, okay? That's not including the administrative costs. So you're looking at an organization and a team that, because of the pandemic and because of, frankly speaking, the lack of inadequate federal government response at this time, okay, spells a situation that is malleable at one point in a good way, but is fraught with peril in another. So when we work with the A's, and we have to do that, that's not an option. We have to have something brought forward that is sympathetic to where they are financially, not just in the needs of the development group. You understand what I'm getting at? So if we don't do that, that's a major problem. That's a major problem. One thing that we don't want is the kind of internecine battles that have occurred before. Because what will happen is that the league will see that and they'll say, well, gee, first of all, you're back to your squabbles, which we don't need. You don't have the entitlements because of the squabbles, right? So you get the stuff with the A's right, and that would be that would be something that has to be done in parallel. Now, what the league is concerned with, first of all, the Raiders are out of Oakland. The Raiders cannot claim control of Oakland. The Raiders, if anything, the only resolution that ties the Raiders to Oakland is no resolution. The only resolution in existence that tied the Raiders to California was the one that put them in second position to get the LA area. Remember that? Other than that, it's gone because of their own actions and the vote. So then also, you've got to lobby the NFL owners. It can't just be the league office alone. It has to be the league office, but you also want to make sure that you've got the right people who can approach owners and make a case. And the case has to be in their best financial interest, obviously. I'm sorry, folks. That's the one way you've got to look at it. You have to look at what you have to have a wish list, okay, a plan that is essentially a wish list, and then say, okay, what can we fill now, right? And what do we need to work on filling, and how? And that begins to assemble the puzzle. So my point is, this isn't, Richard, a one and done, all right? And so he says, if you and the group can at least open some eyes and ears, maybe there's a chance. Well, I think there's a great chance. I really do. I think it would be a fantastic economic boon for Oakland. It would be a fantastic economic boon even for the Raiders, because the Raiders will have a true home and home enemy to play. Okay? What better way to monetize than that, right? There are a number of positives here, but they have to be taken step by step by step. There are various types of financing mechanisms even today that can be used, even in this climate. Okay? Even in this climate. And yes, it will involve housing, but it doesn't have to involve, large market rate, expensive housing, particularly if we get the adjustment in industrial development bond financing legislation that I believe we sorely need to pull this off. All right. Now, someone else may have another alternative idea that doesn't involve it, but I hold that industrial development, this is me talking, not anybody else. I'm not speaking for anybody else. No. They have the official spokesperson. That's Ray Bobbitt. But my point is, industrial development bond financing and a small adjustment into it, which I'm not going to get into right now, would give us a gigantic, an enormous advantage. Enormous. Okay. So we've got Chris Jackson says, how is this proposal going to cooperate with a lawsuit the Forever folks have going? It doesn't. This has nothing to do with that. It's from a technical standpoint. Now, I'm not going to, in fact, I actually encourage, if Breen is listening, I send him a link to come on in, right? But I'm not going to get into that. Let me put it this way. And I'll say this so that it's understood from my end. Okay, as we need Forever Oakland. Period. End of story. We need Forever Oakland. This is not a case of, well, we can do this without somebody. We can't do this without. We need the team together. All right. This isn't a matter. This is not a time to play ego and leave people, on the shore. We need everybody on the ship. We got a room for everybody, as far as what I've been told. Okay. So this is not that at all. We need Forever Oakland. In fact, arguably, we need Forever in Oakland now more than ever. As to how it goes with the lawsuit, that's, you let Forever Oakland hold their press conference and you can ask them. But I don't have the answer to that question. And so he says, how did the 49ers play into this? Is in Oakland now. Their territory doesn't even matter. Oakland, this territory area is not such that the NFL has changed the NFL Constitution and bylaws to take Oakland out of it just yet. All right. But I did just say that the Raiders. Well, actually, you know what? Let me amend that. That means I'm wrong. So I'm wrong because the Raiders still do for the next 3 years have a training camp agreement that's their option to use. So that in and of itself implies an ability to reach into this area if they need to do so. So they're not lost at sea, in that way, right? However, they have a non-relocation agreement that they have signed, and the moment, excuse me, I take that back. The non-relocation agreement will become active the minute the keys to the stadium are turned, as I understand it. The minute Las Vegas, the beautiful Allegiant Stadium is open, that's when the Raiders non-relocation agreement goes on. So, they're in I think, a beautiful situation for them. They have some technical issues they have to deal with financially, of which I'm intimately familiar with, but that is their issue. That is not going to spill over into us. Now, if the Raiders decided to, and I can't imagine the Raiders making a significant issue of it because, look, let's think about that. I mean, let's think the unthinkable for a second, okay? Let's say that the Raiders were to make an issue of it. Well, wait a minute. The group has to pay a franchise fee, of which the Raiders get a part. So why do that? Why hurt your own seed core, right? Does that make any sense? Of course not. All right. The 49ers too. The 49ers cannot make the argument that, not successfully make the argument that their local revenue would be harmed or hampered by another team. The minute they begin to play competition with that team interregionally, some of the most financially successful preseason contests in the history of NFL football have occurred right in the San Francisco Bay Area between the 49ers and the Raiders. All that is needed is the proper branding for us to strike that match and light that flame and create a fire right there yet again. All right. My question is, how much would Mark Davis fight through this? I think I just answered that one, Barry. And Richard Hike says, are we talking expansion or relocation in Oakland? I don't want to answer for the group. I would say that the best route is expansion. However, the question is, if it were relocation, where would that come from? Now, a number of people are going to write, and I think to write this would be a mistake, that Jacksonville be a target, because to write that would show that the person was not familiar with the Jacksonville sports entertainment complex that has been in the planning stages for quite some time. And I don't see the Jaguars owner, Mr. Khan, just giving up on that for the Bay Area automatically. This has to be done carefully. There are a number of demographic shifts that are happening in the area, the Bay Area, and throughout the world. So the demographics we think are going to be there. All right, if we look at, say, 2019 numbers, are not. I will say this, however. We have the opportunity to remake how stadium financing is done and install something that's more robust than something that's relying on hotel taxes, okay, or movement taxes, okay. So, and I think that given where the area is going, given the kind of shakeouts that are happening and what's going to happen in the future, it would be an outstanding position. Bottom line is, you can't do this as a single development play. It has to be, well, just like what's going on down in Inglewood, it has to be a multi-development play with football and sports as your anchor tenant. And not only that, gambling. That's the other beauty of this. You know, I had on Bill Dodd, the great senator from Napa, the great California state senator, talking about his sports gambling legislation. And I offered the possibility. I said, hey, can you fold this into an existing organization, exists like the Oakland Coliseum? He said that it would be a great idea to have Indian gaming organizations, the tribes, be able to license their right. So they license their right to the group and the Coliseum, including, you know, and we're off to the races. That's exciting. So again, you think about that, then industrial development bond financing, and the other financing tools that will be put together that are here. And I think that we've got a fantastic shot at making this really go and setting a model for the future in the process. Let's see here. Richard says, with the Coliseum still standing, the Alameda facility already existing, it can make Oakland a turnkey location until a new stadium is built. If this was something that happens sooner. Yeah, I don't, in terms of sooner, I'm not prepared to say how fast anybody is going to do anything. All right. Again, this is a matter of a lot of stakeholders, and not just a lot, and not only that, not just the obvious stakeholders, but people who have a tendency to sort of be forgotten at the altar. All right. That we can't afford to do. You know, we can't afford to leave out the thoughts and considerations of the homeless groups. You know, Derek Sue is any 62 media vlogger. I'm going to reach out to him for his take on how this should work. We got to do this right. You know, we can't be in the position where we've got people rightly yelling at us for things that we should have done and thought of and we didn't do because we did feel like we didn't need, you know what I'm saying? We need everybody. And so, yeah, it's a complex but fun puzzle to figure out. And that's what makes this so juicy. Because at the end of the rainbow, at the end of this, and the fact that I described it as a rainbow is, I think, is an apt description. But at the end of it is a development facility that not just Oakland and California, but I think the world will be very proud of, and an NFL team within it that will be the envy of the sports world. So anyway, Mr. Jack says, is there any concern that an Oakland NFL team not named the Raiders would struggle to build a fan base? A lot of Bay Area Raider fans are going to follow the team to Vegas. I think that no. Okay, there's not any concern on my part, and it's not taking anything away from the Raiders. For one reason, you have to think of this. This is me talking. I'm not speaking for anybody else in the group. Okay, this is my take. All right, but you have to think of this in terms of building a character. And since we're talking about entertainment, right? Essentially, you have to think of this as building a character and manufacturing a character to take on existing characters. So let me fill this in another way. Let me say that it's like I see it as much like well, I'll just say it. I see this as much like manufacturing a King Kong to take on Godzilla. And there's your branding. Name a better ticket than the Oakland Raiders going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, excuse me. There I go. And there you go, Mr. Jackson. Then the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Oakland Invaders. And so if the Oakland Invaders happen to visit Allegiant Stadium, what are they doing? Oakland is invading. Oakland invaded the Raiders' lair and came out a winner, 48-0. Okay? There, the simple fact that I just said that It's going to set off some bells and whistles. Okay, all right. Therein lay my point. In an international environment, an international economic environment, if we play that properly, we can monetize it extremely successfully. That much I'm certain. Richard says, I was just talking about how Indian casino owners could be a powerful entity in sports. I'd love to see them, but a team like the Braves, Indians, or Redskins just be, well, I think you're missing something here. We're not talking about branding in some way that's offensive. We're not even talking about branding in that way. No. What we're talking about is more like, you see, Oakland Panthers. We're talking about partnering with Indian, and Richard, it's very important in that to familiarize yourself. And I don't mean to be condescending when I say this is just accurate. Familiarize yourself with the sports gaming legislation, and you should have watched our interview with California Senator Dodd from Wednesday. Okay, tribes. The focus is tribes and making sure that tribes are able to take advantage of the Supreme Court's decision unlocking the ability to make money from sports gambling on a state by state level. Okay, that's the idea, and that has nothing to do with branding at all. At all. I mean, then look, think about it this way. Let's take a great example of the Seminole Hard Rock Cafe and Hotel, which is in Miami. I was there during the Miami Super Bowl week for the Culinary Kickoff Classic. Jerry Rice was there, Ronnie Rott was there, others, people, local notables were there, like Michael Mina, Gary Bauer, and $1.5 billion facility, beautiful facility, shaped like a guitar. If you've never seen it before, it's something else. All right. So there are a lot of ways to take advantage of legislation that favors the tribal organizations and in this instance presents them with a gigantic opportunity to be part of the NFL. Corey Brown says, I like the Raptors name, but with a better looking mascot. Okay. And Corey says a lot more Indian gaming around than people realize. Let me get these. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Do we know who the investors are? And if it's an expansion team, we don't. It will be another expansion team to join and make it 34 teams. Gonzo, yes, but I'm not at liberty to name them at this point. And then that's as far as your question. And then will there be another expansion team to join and make it 30? I don't know the answer to that question. In other words, I don't know if it's going to be expansion or relocation. I don't want to get ahead of anybody and say, I know that from a financing standpoint, if it's an expansion, that leads to one set of considerations in terms of financing and franchise fee. My estimation, the franchise fee right there will be about $1 billion, if not $1.4 billion. All right. So if we can get a discount on that, awesome. But I think that's about what we're looking at. But if it's a relocation, it's going to be slightly different in terms of its cost. All right. So what we need to do next is really lay out a good spreadsheet, but now I'm thinking out loud. So we've got Purpose says, I like the idea of this with how great and passionate Bay Area fans are. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, purpose driven, because Dan Rasher, who is my business partner for Sports Business Simulations, and is the academic programs manager at the University of San Francisco, was on my show about a couple of months ago now. And he said that, and he did a study for the plaintiffs groups filing suit against the NFL regarding the relocation. And take that as a note, but he determined that Oakland was the number one city in the United States that didn't have NFL football, but was a great candidate for NFL football. No surprise there. Remember that the Raiders had, what, a 20,000 person waiting list when they left? Okay. Football alone provides an automatic annual advertisement spend that the city benefits from that doesn't have to make, in this case, Oakland, of $25 million. What does that translate to? Being around the world, being in different cities, hearing the name Oakland every time the sports organization, sports team is mentioned. That's incredible value that historically has not been fully appreciated, but it's incredible value. All right. So, Ed Reed, how you doing, Ed? So I think the Titans will be in Oakland. I would love to see we win the name and the colors. Stay tuned. Ed Reed, I'm not certain about that, and the reason I'm not is because of a conversation I had with Tim McGraw, and I think Tim McGraw would personally fight anybody and probably win physically if they tried to yank the Titans out of Nashville. Okay, I, for one, do not recommend anyone tangling with Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw was part of the committee that brought the NFL draft to Nashville, and to date still ranks as the most successful NFL draft in history. The National Football League, if I may digress for a moment, took over 32 city blocks, a testament to the planning of Peter O'Reilly, the NFL senior vice president in charge of events and business operations for the league, and his staff and partners. They did a fantastic job. But it started with Tim McGraw, the now former Titans CEO Stephen Underwood, and a number of people. Governor as well. You need the governor involved, Mayor Lee, everybody. Okay, so it was an all hands on deck effort that they told me would translate into their landing a Super Bowl. You can't land a Super Bowl without having an NFL team. And Nashville is more than keenly aware, but expert at understanding how to fit the NFL in to their downtown and economic development plans. So I would not even dream that anyone can successfully yank the Titans out of Nashville. But of course, that's just me. So we've got, I think Corey says, people are hungry for commitment in Oakland. If new owners are committed to us, I think a new team will get a big support. I agree. And Rich says, also put the word in second job as team photographer. Okay. Edward Reed thinks Jacksonville. He says we have nothing to lose. Matthew Steffen says, dude, NFL is stage, save your breath. I have no idea what that means. Purpose Driven says that study you're talking about is crazy. I hear a lot about how big football is in the area. 20,000 person wait list is ridiculous. That tells you how prime of an area that is. Absolutely. Let's see here. Edward Reed says expansion's in. I personally think expansion would be a fantastic way to go. Okay. Barry Lee, hey man, Barry, please take care of your health, my friend. All right. Good night, and fight that thing. And remember, Noviron, and also there is an it's not over the counter, but it is a medication that you need to get for what you're suffering, Barry Lee. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this. It's called Lacto. I'm going to write this down. Okay. All right, Barry, it's called Lacto. Excuse me for a second, folks. First things first, gotta help my friend out here. Lactoferrin. Yeah. Lactoferrin, Barry, build up your immune system, all right? So for those of you not familiar, also what we're talking about also involves this. This is part of the Coliseum area specific plan. And that building is not, I have no idea what this building is going to look like, but I do know that the Coliseum area specific plan is their focus. This is still active. The entitlements for this are in place for the most part. And so what you see down there that you're saying, isn't that the arena the Warriors used to play on? The answer is yes, it is. And that was the original plan, to have a venue for, of course, right here, the A's, who were focused on Howard Terminal. The Warriors were here. And then, of course, this will be for the Raiders. All right. These were offices and condos. Now, I think the way we're changing, with people working out of their homes, this may very well provide an even bigger opportunity for us, since Coliseum City was to have housing and hadn't really settled upon a kind of a mix of offices that was all sort of, conceptual ether. No one had really, save for one person, penciled it out. Me. So, and I did so in the form of the Raiders plan that Mark Davis asked me to come up with, that the traditional media never asked me about and made fun of, but the right people in the right positions never made fun of it. And Piper Jaffray investment bankers blessed. So Richard Hike says, I agree with expansion. I don't want someone sloppy seconds. And after feeling what I felt with the second loss of the Raiders, I don't want to do that to another fan base. Got it. Got it. The biggest consideration here, for those of you who may think about writing this, is where we are with respect to this pandemic. It has wrecked sponsorship flows. It has altered housing patterns and demographics. A number of people are leaving California. So everything that's done has to be done in that context, but with a proviso. The system of financing has to be accordion-like, so that can grow with monetary expansion, okay? But in a way where it's robust against any economic decline. Now, do I understand how to do that? Yes. And I'm not going to reveal entirely how that works. But I am throwing out that the conventional ways we used in the past can't operate. They have to be different. So Corey Brown offers, he says, Buffalo Bills maybe. I heard once their owner passed the other year that their commitment state ended, if I remember correctly. The Bills, again, given that region's desire to spend public money and its expertise on building, on having the will and the initiative to complete large-scale public projects, I'm not willing to bet against them. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not willing to bet against them. So I think what we have to do is we have to swing for the fences. We have to structure a deal that that rests on what we think is most doable, which would be expansion. Go with a financing structure from there, and then adjust it as we lobby. Okay. Adjust it as we work. It can't be static. If it's static, it's not going to work. If it's politically static, it's not going to work. It can't be too static. It can't be too loose. Okay. I mean, it can't be so loose that it's not recognizable. It can't be so loose that it gets to a point where we got to with the Raiders thing, where we had at the end of the day, the Oakland deal boiled down to, hey, Mr. Davis wants a $750 million loan. We got one here in our butt. We got one here in a trench coat too. Yeah, we got one right here. Oh, you need a Swiss Army life? We got one here too. You know what I mean? We can't do that, because it would show that we didn't know what we were doing, really. and that we didn't have any confidence in what we were doing. There's a tightrope that has to be walked there. So Richard says, man, the Bills are just one of those teams that aren't the same anywhere else, like the Steelers and the Cowboys. Excellent point. But at the end of the day, it depends on what organizations and teams in the league want to do it. All right. So the Oakland Warriors. Hey, you know what? There are people with higher pay grades than mine. Not that I don't aspire to that pay grade, but there are people higher in pay grades than mine that have that decision. Corey says, I would definitely rather expansion. Boom. And so, Chris, I'm sorry. Chris says, Richard, I strongly agree with the point. Losing the Raiders was crushing. I wouldn't want another fan base to go through that. No, absolutely not. But you know what, though? See, this is just like in a number of ways. The combination of events that caused the Raiders to return. Now, careful. Listen to what I'm saying here. All right, listen to what I'm saying. The combination of events that eventually led to the Raiders return to Oakland from LA. It was quite simply the fact that Oakland had a deal that it was willing to pitch. It wasn't so much that Mr. Davis wanted to leave, but that Oakland had something that was pitchable. Okay, which started out at $863 million, and then the city council back then, we're talking about originally 1993 when it was proposed, took a look at it, and Dick Spees said, Dick Spees was the then Oakland District 4 council member and dean of the city council. Great man. If you ever visit the Chabot Science Center, think of and thank Dick Spees. So everybody says, I would pray you're on the front lines. Then we need to have a team. We need to we say we need to have a team. We say have our own for many years to come and not being nomads. Now I'm honored that I was asked to be a consultant in this, and it's an honor to be blessed. So and I'm going to do my God-given best to help out the organization and make this happen. So let's see, where are we? Any other questions? It is, and I'll pick this up tomorrow if anybody else has any other discussions. But to me, we've been through this so many times. I feel like, hey, there's that horse over there. Let's go get up and ride it again, right? But this time we've got a great combination of people that are involved in this in many different ways. And I think in the spirit of harmony that has been created by this incredible recognition of Juneteenth, okay? And I mean multi-racial harmony. That should lead to multi-interest harmony, multi-class harmony, right? And what better place to have that done than Oakland, you know? So also, Oakland needs this. Why? Because, and this is me talking, obviously, the city is going away from having those things that I think Baltimore, when Baltimore had William Donald Schaefer, I believe his name was, as mayor, he said that, look, every city has its pathologies. Oakland has loved to talk about its problems, get mired in talking about its problems. But Oakland has to begin to talk about its successes and has to understand how to create success. It has this again, I said this again. I'll say it. I say it again and again and again. I'll say it another time. Oakland has to have the will and the initiative to complete big projects. That's what this is about. Not laying out that individual path. Well, you can do what you want to, and you can do what you want to, and you can build this, and you can do that. Bringing together. Okay. So Chris says, if Forever Oakland is ever to retain the name and colors through lawsuit, could this new expansion team be called the Raiders? While I don't know. You're asking questions that are better asked of Forever Oakland. I am not Forever Oakland spokesperson. I think they would be rightly insulted if I tried to be. And I think there'll be a big mistake for me to even try to be. Okay. I am not Forever Oakland spokesperson. I have no interest in trying to guess at what they think. That's the question that you have to ask Greg Jones and all the other people that are involved with Forever Oakland. I am not touching that at all. Richard says, I wish there was some way I could help make it happen. You're part owner of Zenny62 Media. What the heck is wrong with you, Richard? Come on. You'll think of something. Fantasy Friday night. That's where it starts. I mean, to take your comment, to its logical conclusion, wasn't Star Wars a fantasy that George Lucas didn't think was going to pan out? I think you just stepped right into that one. Richard Hike says, Raiders should have rebranded regardless. So many people don't want them. They want something all their own. No, a lot of people want the Raiders. I'm a Raiders fan. I'm a fan of what they're doing in Las Vegas. I'm not a fan of certain errors they've made that I warned them about continuously. Like, for example, the too small hotel tax. Like, for example, to just put it out there, they could have had $813 million more in their coffers had they listened to what I had suggested. They told me they didn't need, but it turned out at the end of the day, they did. Like, for example, a tax increment financing zone around the stadium that was originally in the SB1 legislation, but the Raiders allowed to have it taken out when Mr. Adelson said, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay for it with my money. They should have just said, oh, wait a minute. No. All right. Why? Because we want to be there to capture the land value when it goes up. You want to have the money, right? So I'm at the Raiders sponsor party. I say this to Dan Ventrelli and Ellen McCabe. They both nod in agreement. It's a good idea. I haven't said anything to the Raiders in terms of ideas that would have been harmful to them. Everything that I've said to the Raiders was for one objective, to make sure that their project was liquid. Right now, their project still has a liquidity problem. Getting closer to opening doors does not eliminate that. Remember that. That project still has a liquidity problem, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, everybody says Oakland Panthers, Outlaws. I like these. Oakland Panthers, Outlaws, Rough Riders, Invaders. First round of names. Let's go, Zen. Hey, again, not my call. But I'm right there with you, brother. Corey Brown says it would be so awesome to see Oakland get a new team in the face of all that said Oakland is not a good enough. And that's the other thing, Corey. You're going to hear people on the right. I don't know what they're writing, but almost invariably someone is going to write this really ridiculous idea that Oakland doesn't have enough economic power when, should I throw up the Bay Area map and basically show everybody, where Silicon Valley is and just say, Silicon Valley corporations. I wonder if I can do that. Silicon Valley corporate map, and see. I wonder if there is such a thing, just showing where, all these companies are located. Something kind of like, I think I may have found it, but just to give you an idea of, what the power would look like, in some way. Okay. Maybe, excuse me. Something that looks along the lines of, let's see here. One moment here. looks along the lines of something like this. Maybe this. Maybe this will work out. Let's see. That. You can tell by my eyes I'm playing around with something, right? Hold on a second, folks. That. And then put this here. And put this, take that out, remove this one. And then share screen. Let's see what it'll give me, allow me to pull it up. And it won't. It's so large, it won't. Basically, let's see here. What I found was a very cool map of Silicon Valley. Now it heard me. Thank you. All right. Allow. All right. There we go. Now let's scroll down like here. There we go. All right. You see all those? Okay. IBM, Ryko, UMC, Apple, Sanyo. All right. Boy, you know what that is? You know what that's called? You know what I call it? Sponsorship heaven. All right. Partnership heaven. And can you imagine, folks? Take a look at this. All right. Imagine for a moment. Work with me here. Imagine for a moment a stadium that had the ability to allow all of these companies to have their own little space to show the latest products and wares. Kind of like the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, but the experimental prototype tech exhibit hall in a stadium of today. No one's ever done that. We have the opportunity to do something like that. Oakland is in the modern Detroit. That was what the Bay Area is, okay? Even with all of its problems, okay? Even with all of the problems we're facing right now, even with the layoffs, restructuring, and downsizing, the simple fact that I'm using this to talk to you, the StreamYard, or Zoom, which is based in San Francisco, has a multi-billion-dollar valuation now, okay? You get it, all right? So let's go on. Raiders SP, how you doing? He says, I think Mark was 100% focused on leaving no matter what Oakland did. And then he says, because if Mark really wanted to stay, he would have wanted a little more and waited for a plan. I think in fairness to Mark, he had estate considerations and other considerations that were really pushing him along. And look, I will say this, okay? It didn't, look, all right? I'm not blowing smoke here when I say this, okay? One of the biggest mistakes made in that entire process, and it was when Nate Miley left, and Nate's a friend, okay? But he did do this. And folks, I keep saying he's my friend, but they didn't put me on the Coliseum JPA board either, all right? They didn't put me on the advisory board either, so I'm nice to a lot of these folks, but they haven't turned around and said, hey, we need Zinni here, right? Right? Okay, I'm just telling it like it is. I'm just telling it like it is. So my critical hat I put on that they don't like that I put on, why not? Look, here's the thing. Nate had no business leaving Raider headquarters and putting out a press release basically blowing up Oakland's chances to retain the Raiders at that point, because that was May 15th, I believe, of 2015, May 6th or 15th, when Eric Grubman had come into town. They had a meeting, and I was trying to track him down. I wound up following Grubman and Bedane to the airport, and that's when Grubman said, actually, it wasn't May. That was like later. I think it was like April, May, June, July, August, June. But anyway, he says, they're not using your plan. They're going to go with something else. It was that meeting. And then Nate put out his thing. And he didn't need to do that. And that's when the mayor had Claudia Capio involved. And Claudia, by her own admission, was just rushing to catch up. Okay? She was a houser. I love housers. Okay? Housing policy specialists, housing development specialists. She's a houser. This wasn't something that was in her league. It was a different area. And she was just, again, she was doing that, and she was taking care of other things, and they needed someone with a specialized focus, not who was kind of all over the place. So Raiders business would never list. It is what it is. I'm still a Raider. And yeah, so the fun part about this is crafting. See, the Raiders are Godzilla, so we have to craft King Kong. See, that's the whole idea here. All right. We have to make a better flick than Godzilla versus King Kong. And we have to certainly make a better one than the one that keeps getting moved back in terms of its debut date, right? We know who Godzilla is. It's the Raiders. King Kong, we got to build King Kong. And so what better group than the first African-American investor group to do it? Right? There it says, Mr. Brown, totally agree with you. We will and we shall get an NFL team in the town. NFL did us wrong. We'll pitch in. Stay tuned. And he says, what percent do you think this will happen? I don't think it's a matter of a percent at all. It's a matter of will and determination. Because if I answer that question, it sounds like I'm outside looking in. And in this instance, I'm not. So you're asking me essentially to bet against myself, which I never do. And I'm not saying it's all on me. It's not. I'm not putting it that way. But I'm saying that nobody, that's like, you know, no one ever asked Jerry Jones that question, right? So I believe this group has that kind of chutzpah. I believe this group has a Jerry Jones level of chutzpah to pull this off. Now, there are a lot of reasons, you know, for this not to go all the way. But again, given the fact that the steps are known to us and very much doable, I think that if we play our cards right, this could be a lead pipe lock cinch. If we play our cards right. You should have waited to the current, yeah. I wouldn't call Donald Trump is smart. He's smart in a way that is the president's smart in a way that's Machiavellian. All right, that's another conversation. Roderick Todd says Mark Davis is about as smart as Donald Trump. That is the only reason the Raiders aren't here anymore. I don't think it's appropriate to question how smart somebody is. I think, look, the one thing that I love about Mark, and yeah, I said it just like that, is his willingness to build business, his intent on branding. He sees branding. I remember at the Raider sponsorship party, we were at the Delano. And if you've ever been to the Skyfall Lounge, oh, there's that Adele music. You know, I'm thinking of the backdrop, windows, you can see the Las Vegas Strip, you know. I'm saying that to you, and I'm not giving you appropriate view of, you know, what I'm talking about, right? But Delano, but we were there, and yeah, here we go, right there, and he was pointing out to the Strip, and he said, look at that, look at all that is, it's activation. So when he looks at a place like Vegas, he sees how brand and business can be expressed in that context. So I think Mark really has to be given his genius props for that. And I say that very seriously, okay? Mark's problem has been, over the years, he's been made fun of and not taken seriously. And now he has had his opportunity to exact revenge. And look, by all accounts, at least by my book, he's done it. Okay, maybe, he didn't miss this, maybe made mistakes here and there, right? And I'm saying something I know some people don't like. But in order to achieve success, you have to take your blinders off and look at things as they are. There are people who made fun of him and shouldn't. And his father, they forgot one thing. His dad gave him the keys to the kingdom. Dad has keys to the kingdom. You respect the person that has the keys to the kingdom. End of story. All right. There you go. Okay. Richard Hike says the rivalry within the Oakland community, should this happen, is pretty remarkable. I hate to see violence, but the old Raiders fans versus new fans could be volatile. No, I don't think so. I don't see that at all. It says the president is smart. He just shoots himself in the foot a lot. Yeah, he does. He does do that. He does do that. Let me see something here. I don't know if this is a possibility. If I'm going to take a shot in the dark. No, not that kind of shot in the dark. Excuse me. Just talking, just trying something here. We'll see what that goes. At any rate, where we are right now, we are 1 hour into this. So I am going to close out right now. It doesn't look like there's any other questions or comments. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Here's one. If there's an expansion team, Coliseum City would be a really good model for them to look at. Yes, 1 billion%. I quite agree. I really do. Okay, folks, I'm going to close out right now, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. And if you have any questions, you can reach me here, ZENNIE at ZENNIE62.com. That is not my main corporate email. That's the one that I use for correspondence. Okay. So, thank you. Thanks, everybody.